Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Welcome to the show. We've got a wonderful musical quartet joining us for this episode, and they're going to tell us all about their long history of playing together. They have the most energetic and really fun collaboration. I enjoy talking with them so much, and the music is really very alive, and, well, you'll hear it. Celebrating collaboration seems like a good thing right about now. So let's meet my guests on this episode of Paradigms. Grupo Los Santos, Pete Smith, David Ambrosio, Max Pollack, Beaver, Bausch. Welcome to Paradigms.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It's really a treat to have all four of you. It's like I got the whole band. Okay.
You don't realize how difficult that is.
You've just got this wonderful new record out, Santos 4, which of course makes me think there must be a 3, 2, and a 1. So you've been playing together for a while, and you play this wonderful music. I would love to just hear from each of you a little bit about how you became a musician and how the four of you found each other and how you co-create.
The short of it is just that my brother was a big influence on me. He was a guitarist. And so I kind of tried to follow in his footsteps. He was a professional musician for a long time. And then I went through many different paths before I actually got to the bass, really, as being my main thing. But anyway, that's a long story. But so that's where it started, though.
Very cool. Your brother.
Yeah. Family, you know. My dad was actually a musician, too. So we used to hang out in our basement in our house, and we used to and my mom would kind of sing, and we'd have like a family kind of music vibe. So it was cool.
Oh, wow. So you come from a whole musical family.
Well, I mean, in terms of just like professionally, only my brother. But my dad was on the Ed Sullivan Show actually a long time ago with his band when he was like 18 years old or something.
Wow. I didn't know that, David.
Really? I never told you guys that story? I wish I could find something about that. I've searched, but I can't find anything. I don't know what they did. They probably just did some little
band called the Beatles, so you probably wouldn't have heard of them.
Right, exactly.
I bet it's on YouTube somewhere if you can wade through the million years of video up there.
I feel like it's got to be archived in some way somewhere, but anyway, I haven't been able to find it. But
very cool. Who wants to go next?
I saw Fred Astaire tap dance on television when I was 5. And that made me want to become a tap dancer. That's really the beginning. And then everything else kind of fell into place following that. I realized that what I liked, besides the movement and the beautiful elegance and the sounds from the shoes, was also the sounds from the band and the jazz that was behind it. So I started playing drum set just a little while after I started tap dancing. Yeah, then I studied musical theater. I was an actor, singer, dancer type for a while. And then I came to New York, did professional tap dancing, and also started studying music at the New School in Manhattan. Via the New School studies, I found Afro-Cuban music, partly through a class that I took with Bobby Sanabria, who was Tito Puente's drum set player and Mongo Santamaria's drum set player for a long time, and is a great teacher, but also because of Mr. William Beaver Bausch and Mr. Peter Smith, who are right here. They kind of helped me discover the communal element of Afro-Cuban music, which is held together by the clave concept, and the idea that a very, very simple pattern played by one person can result in a beautiful melody if played with 3 other very, very simple patterns that have different melody notes, and then it becomes this combined, beautiful power that is stronger than the sum of its parts. And I owe that to specifically Beaver and Pete here. Absolutely.
And the body music.
That came in more towards a couple of years in, when my back started giving out because I was carrying too many drums and too much heavy equipment. And I decided to focus more on using my hands on my body rather than schlepping heavy metal implements. And that was one of the reasons why I started doing that. And I'm very happy with that.
Very cool.
I'll go. Getting to the guitar was a bit of a process. My mom tried to get me on the piano, and I took some lessons at an age when, sports were starting to happen and neighborhood street hockey games, et cetera, et cetera. And then I tried trumpet, failed at that miserably. Guitar was something that I chose just myself when I was 10 years old. And there was something about the idea of holding something in your arms and the feeling of the vibration of the wood when you played it, that it was just like such a consoling instrument in a way, and just a very comfortable thing for me. So my mom really didn't want to have anything to do with me doing music on the guitar, because she had already tried these other things. And she was like, look, if you're still playing it after a year, I'll spring for some lessons for you. So I was still playing it, and she got me some lessons with my high school science teacher. And the fact that my science teacher was playing gigs in the local towns of Westboro and Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, was a real question mark in my brain. Like, wait a minute, science teacher by day, gigging musician by night. How does this work? So, just like Dave says, having professional musicians in your family, but like just that contact with someone in the world that was doing something a little different was really important to me. And then later went to college and met Beaver Bausch, and immediately started playing with him in some groups. As our college experience went on, we happened to I think both strike it pretty lucky by getting to study under Donald Byrd, the great Donald Byrd, jazz trumpeter, composer, recording artist. And that was in and of itself was a can opener experience for the brain. I mean, I don't think I would have become a professional musician had I not met him. So to this day, he's one of my my biggest mentor and biggest influence. Meeting Beaver and having really what's been, this very long relationship, friendship and musical relationship, it's been just an incredible ride. And, he has taught me so much, and everyone in this band has taught me so much, and I continue to learn from them. The whole Santos thing, the way it evolved, it's amazing to think that 20 plus years down the road, it's still viable. There's fruit that can be, that can be grown and that can be picked and sampled.
And you did eventually figure out why your science teacher had to have a day job.
Yeah, I did.
Mr. Bausch?
I'm still grappling with the idea that you think I'm a musician. So, I'm very excited to reframe my entire existence. My parents were not overtly musical. They had, I guess, their typical experience of being forced into piano lessons and hating it. So they just left me alone. And at some point in elementary school, I saw this kid play a snare drum, and I was like, that's really cool. And then I switched schools and was distracted and couldn't figure it out. And then before sixth grade started, there was a tiny music store down in the little center of town. This is Sandy Hook, Connecticut, which, no one would have known about, except now we're Columbine famous. So anyway, this was before all that, obviously. So anyway, there's this little store called the Music Hut. And I was like, I want to study drum lessons. And my mom gave me a similar lecture to Pete's mom, I guess. All right, but if I have to tell you to practice, like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And they bought me like a piece of wood with some rubber glued to it and a metronome, one of those. But we lived on a hill, so it never seemed to work right, which is probably why my time is so fluid.
I was about to say, that explains it.
Yeah.
No wonder.
But everybody goes back, beak, back, beak, back. Oh, it's like the clave. So anyway, that was the beginning of it for me. And I was like, why would you have to tell me to practice? Like, that's just weird. So I studied through high school and then met Pete in college and Donald Byrd and all these other things to open my tiny brain. So that's my exciting origin story.
I'm talking with Pete Smith, David Ambrosio, Max Pollack, and William Beaver Bausch, Grupo Los Santos. You can tell already that they're great friends and that they have a great time. making music together. So let's hear some of it right now. Their new record, Santos 4, brings us this track, Cross Clave Blues. And then we'll be back with more conversation. Here's Grupo Los Santos. And this is Paradigms at paradigms.life. Cross Clave Blues. That's Grupo Los Santos from their new record, Santos 4. Let's get back to my conversation now with Beaver, Pete, David, and Max. Grupo Los Santos. Grupo Los Santos, group of saints. How did the name come?
So Pete and I met in 85. We moved to Boston in 89. I think he moved in 88. Came to New York. So we were playing together in different configurations. And we were playing with a tenor player named Paul Carlin, who's an amazing player and a great composer. And in the early 90s, I met this guy. We'll call him Juan Caliente, who I thought was a total goober. I hope you don't listen to this, John. But I was already messing with Cuban stuff, just bought some books. I know this guaguanco rhythm. I'm going to, whatever. So I went to a jam session. They played what's that song? Green Dolphin Street that constantly is like swing Latin. And so I was like, I'm going to use my guaguanco, and I tried to play it, and the band promptly fell apart. No one knew what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it. We recovered and beat the song to death, and I played a more standard sort of Latin beat. And afterwards, John, the drummer, came up to me and was like, "Yeah, man, I heard the guaguanco, man, but you can't cross the clave like that, man. I mean, Latin cats, jazz cats maybe, but Latin cats." And I'm just like, clave, cross the clave? What are you even talking about? So I started studying with him in like the early 90s, where he just gave me a rudimentary, like, this is the clave, these are the patterns that you play with it. And he was very strict about just kind of a timbale approach. Like, you have to know how to do this, abanico, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I went and then I studied with other people in New York. And by 96, I went to Banff. And by 98, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to go to Cuba. So there was a place in New York called El Taller Latinoamericano, or if you're not Spanish speaking, El Taller Latinoamericano, and they had Spanish lessons. So I studied Spanish intensively for about 6 months before I went to Cuba. And I think Max also studied there. I think everybody ended up studying there at some point or other. And Max and I were roommates in Havana in 1998. And then we came back just full of like, there's just, we have to do something. So we grabbed the people that we were playing together previously, and we just kind of crammed them into like, this is what we're going to do. Let's figure out how to do this. This is at the same place I studied, El Taller. So we had at that point, well, William, but Peter, Paul, and Nicholas was the bass player. So St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Nicholas. So the founder of El Taller was like, "Oh, Los Santos, the saints are all here. St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Nicholas." St. William, I don't know what he did. Probably
St. Beaver.
Right.
St. Beaver.
St. Beaver, the patron saint of pornography in the 70s. So yeah, so that's the short version of our origin stories.
And we were playing at El Taller like once a week for several years, developing the band's concept and sound. And we were playing for free. But Beaver would like have a drum bucket, and they would pass the drum bucket around, and we would take whatever tips. And we actually over time developed a great audience there. It was the fact that we were playing for free and just really wanted to workshop this music that Bernardo Palumbo gave us the name. Like, you're playing for free, you must be saints, So the name was definitely tongue in cheek.
Just a few minutes with the four of you, and I can tell that you really like each other and you have a lot of fun. I know now you're going to say you don't really like each other, but that you like each other and you have a lot of fun, and that you love the music and you love what you're doing. It so comes across.
So glad to hear that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it comes across in the music. So tell me about what it's like to play together. What's the magic? How do you do it? What's the deal?
It's just like waiting for a fire to start. And then about, 3 seconds later, the fire starts, because all of us are in a way antagonists to each other. What we have to work with, there's so much to work with in terms of concept, that because we've been playing together for so many years, but we also know each other so well. So it's fly by the seat of your pants kind of situation. It's really fun. It's just, you described it so well. I mean, we have a great time playing together, but it's always on. You know what I mean? Like it's always just like, trial by fire.
And we can all take huge risks because we trust each other so much and we know each other so well that every single one of us doesn't have to worry. Nobody has to worry that anything is going to go south, because if it goes south, the others will come south with me, and then we'll swim north again. It doesn't really matter, and we enjoy the process. We are not averse to going into some territory where really nobody knows what the hell is happening. That's kind of the fun of it. Then we're like, oh, where are we now? I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then we'll, find another exit. The main thing is we don't worry anymore. We've clocked enough miles together that we know everybody has each other's backs, and it's going to go somewhere, and it's always going to end up sounding great. And the more risks we take, the more fun we have. Basically, that's kind of the way I think we all feel.
You've got your 10,000 hours as a quartet.
Definitely. Most definitely. Yes.
I
At least cursing at each other. Yeah.
definitely. I remember there was a friend of the band, fellow musician and friend of the band, who heard us a lot, or heard us many times, then sub for Pete, perhaps maybe more than once even. And by the end of the gig, he said, "Man, I finally understand you guys. I get it now. I finally get it." I said, "What?" He goes, "You guys are all just trying to lose one another all the time, and seeing who can lose, who can do the best job of losing the other cats." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess that's kind of it, really. That's pretty much how it works."
So you're chasing each other's tails.
Yeah, just like, okay, here's what I got. What do you think about that? And then someone else is like, well, this is what I think about it. How about this? And so, of course, maybe it might not sound like to some folks as the most fun way to play music necessarily, like to try to see how messed up everything can get. We like Max was saying about the trust, we enjoy it.
We'll be back with more of this conversation with these four great guys, Grupo Los Santos. But here's a couple of more tracks from their new record, Santos 4. We're starting out with Canción. That's a song that I think was just mentioned, Ants Dance. Before that, Canción. These come from the new album Santos 4 from Grupo Los Santos. Here's the next part of my conversation with El Grupo. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. Well, you know those times in a gig where you have, the guitarist does a lick and then, the pianist imitates that lick and then takes off on it, and then the guitarist has to match them, and then the horn player has to match them. It sounds like you're playing this sort of a game with each other.
Definitely.
Yeah, we did a lot of that coming up, but I also think we got to the point where we enjoyed even more, like, oh, you just said that? Well, I'm gonna talk about something completely different. Flipping that whole idea that you mentioned on its head became of real interest to us in terms of how music evolves in the moment, So we've become really, really good at listening to each other to the point where we've become really, really good at not listening to each other at all.
You sound like married people.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think there's one. I honestly can't remember if it's on this record or the last record, but there's one. I think it's this recording where we're playing something, and I've listened to it like 20 times, and I'm like tapping my hands through it to try to see like because I'm like, what is going on there? I still to this day I can't figure out what actually happened there, but somehow all four of us just went like boom at the moment and just came together. And it's like, how did that even happen? Because there's no logic in that as a listener in that at all. But somehow while we were doing it, it just all made sense. And I think that's that's really like kind of where what we're trying to do in many ways. It's just go into outer space and then all of a sudden just materialize in a completely different zone. It's like
the magic of improvisation is totally. that these moments happen that you are mind blowing and where things come together, and you can copy it, but you can't replicate it. And the emotion in that moment where it happens is so powerful.
Yeah. But, to play that way, you definitely have to, put the egos aside and just put everything aside and really just have it be about the music, It's the great thing about actually having a band that's been together for a long time or playing, forming these long relationships with people is that you can do that together. But we definitely, we're always exploring that. It doesn't ever seem to come to an end. Or find new zones.
When we're in the moment, to me, it always feels like the four of us are telling different aspects of the same story, beginning from different points in the universe. We might be completely in different sectors, for a long time, but eventually we converge and the story is the same story, the story is the same story from the beginning. It's just how we find each other in the process is what makes it thrilling, because there's always tension and there's always things that are like slightly unresolved. And, as a listener, you go like, what? Where is this going? But then it makes sense. Oftentimes that's compositionally designed, but most of the time it's very much improvisational, and especially when we have big sort of like jam outs, to me, they're like cookouts, everybody's cooking. And sometimes you pull back and you let the other guys do their thing, and then you throw the chili in or nothing or whatever. And then the whole thing just goes and over here.
It's kind of a Rashomon process.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. So who brings in what for new compositions? Do you each come in with different melody lines or ideas? Does one person do more of this part, or does someone just start playing something and the others join in? What's the compositional process like?
Traditionally, it was everybody brings their own tunes to the party. By traditionally, I mean like up until 2015. So from 98 to 2015, that was the way that we mostly did it. But 2015 was the end of our working with the saxophonist that I mentioned, Paul. This album is kind of a crystallized thing of loss, of change, of patience and time. We have this thing that is really important to us because it makes us so much money. We just can't not do it anymore. Paul was really important. Like, a saxophone is an important instrument in a quartet or quintet. Like, it's the melody instrument mostly. It's, he's a wonderful composer. He brought in a lot of stuff. We already had an album ready to go when things kind of went south. So for me anyway, it was like, well, how are we going to save and change and survive and be something that's not a sad shadow of what it was? Do we bring in other people? How are we going to make this work? And one of the ways that seemed to work is, I would bring in, okay, I got this idea. I got this bass line. All right. And, oh, well, Dave wrote a melody over it that I would never in a million years have written. I don't hear it. Like, I don't know even how it works, but it's great. Okay, I've got this thing.
By the way, it took me about 2 years to realize how that melody works, but I think I do now.
Maybe someone can explain it to me then.
Yeah. Max was always like an amazing addition. We always had him on a couple tunes in the record, but we were like, hey, Max, are you feeling insane enough to like go full bore on this? And he was like, oh yeah, and I have a tune. And we're like, oh, all right, well, yeah, this will work. Great. And Ants Dance. For me, it was kind of like closing ranks. Like, okay, we're going to keep this family together and we're going to kind of shift the way that we work and see if it goes. David is an upright player, an amazing upright player. And you can speak for yourself, David, if we decide to let you, but
no, go ahead. Yeah.
The collective choice was like, I think electric would be better for this. We're kind of in a more aggressive headspace. We've got, a lot going on. It's easier for the bass to, play a melody and be heard with this pork chop rather than the upright, which puts us in more of a traditional jazz space where you got to kind of,
I was just waiting for a band to play electric in too, so it was perfect timing.
You were about to leave. You were about like, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, I was like, this was not going to work. This quartet with tap. What are you guys talking? Acoustic bass, and then I was like, oh, electric. Yeah, all right, this will be cool.
Reel them
and
back.
It actually turned out to be really cool.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Pete, Max, David, and Beaver after this track from their new record, Santos 4. It's called Rumba para Otoño. Rumba para Otoño. That's Grupo Los Santos from their new record Santos 4. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Grupo Los Santos. I had a friend who was a bass player, Ellen Powell. She's passed. You might have heard of her. She was in Vermont, and at a certain point, she had to stop playing the double bass and just do the electric because it was getting old. She was getting older, and it was just hard.
Yeah.
Physically, yeah, I believe it.
Not there yet, but I feel it.
Yeah, and
Sure.
to continue on what Beaver was saying, I feel like it's important to note that, before 2015, it was like Beaver and Paul were the Lennon and McCartney of the group. They were the primary composers, and their thought process was so complete that they would come, to the band with complete compositions that really, I mean, yeah, we'd make some changes as a band, but ultimately those pieces were done. And when Paul left, the sort of the rejiggering with instruments and approaches. Before with Paul, it was like David or Max or myself were more like the George Harrison, like, oh, there's one tune or two tunes here or there, But it was more this time around, the 2015 until they were finally getting this record out. It's a much more egalitarian situation where not only are we co-composing on things, but we're also just all throwing into the pot on a more even playing field. Beaver's still the predominant composer, but everybody's contributing.
Yeah, and literally if I'm remembering correctly, on Rumba para Otoño, I think that we actually, like, the structure of what we were doing was there, but there was no melody, and we kind of, I wouldn't say improvised it completely, because there was some stuff that we kind of stopped and said, oh, well, how about this? But it was just kind of like improvised. I mean, so the compositional process was becoming more part of the improvisational thing that we go through. And that part is really cool. It's like that, because composition is really just kind of, or I should say maybe improvisation is spontaneous composition, essentially. And so we, like this kind of new way that we have of writing, I guess we'll see what happens for the next record, but this new way we had of writing really was like even the composition was part of the kind of improvisatory open process that have been exploring for so long, but now kind of inclusive of composition as well.
I think what I'm most impressed by talking with the four of you is the spirit of collaboration, and that it's safe to take risks with each other because you know each other so well. But also, it seems to me there's a lot of mutual respect. It's not just that you know each other. We're joking and it's fun and all that, and that's great. And there is like this ground on which you all stand together. And at this time in the world, and I always have to bring it around to this kind of a thing, collaboration between humans. This is a good thing. This is something for us to learn from your collaboration, people who are listening, and how can we all be in more collaboration?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Our personal history with each other, I think, is also a great example of this. As I said before, me even dealing with Latin rhythms or Afro-Cuban rhythms is partly due to me meeting Beaver and Pete and jamming at their apartment or something like that. And that launched me into a very, very deep exploration on my terms, of that culture specifically, which resulted in me being able to offer the band a trip to Cuba, where we all went in 2001, and we performed at a tap festival that I had organized in Havana, the first ever tap festival to take place in Havana, by the way. They all came along, which had a huge impact, not just on me, but on every single one of us, which then resulted in Dave Ambrosio getting really, really fascinated with the Afro-Cuban sacred bata drums and the rhythms and the religion, and going on his personal journey with that, then taking all of us along with that, resulting in the band doing certain things that we would never have done maybe if Dave hadn't started being a serious bata player. So the entire 25-year history that we're talking about now is a hugely personal and amazingly mind-opening experience for every single one of us, without which none of our lives would be what they are now. Heavily, heavily impacted each of our careers. Mine for sure. I also want to put in here something that I've not really talked about with these guys, but I'll say it now. In August 1999, which was only about a few months after Santos had started playing together at El Taller. In August 1999, my good friend Mapi Torres, a wonderful Cuban poet, she was a writer and poet and a supporter of my efforts and of Grupo Los Santos efforts. And Mapi Torres heavily influenced me, if not to say kicked me in the butt, to do a performance of my individual choreography style that was named Rumba Tap by the Afro-Cuban folkloric group Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. And Mapi pushed me to perform this material at El Taller, the same place, with, you guessed it, Pete on guitar. Back then it was Nicholas on bass and Beaver on the drums and a bunch of rumberos and dancers from Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. So the very first Rumba Tap performance happened in 1999, which in 2024 will be the 25th anniversary. And there will be stuff happening, just putting that out there. And this also means it's the 25th anniversary of Grupo Los Santos, basically. So I'm going to stop talking now, but this is really important to me, and I know it is for the other guys too.
I think it's important to, just talk a little bit more about that thing, like how beautifully circular this whole experience has been for all of us in many ways. And, talking about that, where that mutual respect really comes from. So you've heard about this other bass player that was part of the band for the first record and their whole kind of learning, the whole beginning of their learning experience. And I wasn't around for any of that. And all of a sudden they've had this established thing, which was really like a deep study, not only just a band. Like these guys were like workshopping and studying stuff, like pretty serious. It's not like anyone who doesn't know what's going on could just, like in a typical jazz situation, where it's like, oh, if I know the standards, I can play. It was like, and these guys asked me to play, or at least, asked me to play a gig or two, I think, at that time. And then they asked me to play in the band, and I couldn't really understand why, because I was completely lost as to what was going on. I had no idea about this music, at least especially like on the deep level that they were, dealing with it. I think another thing that connects us is that we're all like learners, we all want to keep learning all the time, and we're all like studiers, and so I'm definitely one of those. So I took a deep dive into it and continued playing with these guys, and they kept me along for it. And then, we did go to Cuba, and then I did get involved in the Afro-Cuban folkloric sacred music and the drumming, and took another deep dive into that, which was in some ways separate of the band. But of course, how am I not going to bring that to the band, especially to any music that I play, but especially this band? So, and it didn't happen right away. I just kind of kept it separate for a long time, because I just wanted to kind of immerse myself in that zone. I just wanted to be in the learning process. But then, at some point I decided, hey guys, let's incorporate this stuff some more. And so then I was able to give them something of, back for what they gave me, because they gave me a lot. And like we all said, we've learned a lot from each other. But, so it kind of, this whole kind of circular thing that, who knows where the circle's going next? I don't even know. But it just seems to keep revolving that way. It's really nice. I think it's unusual. There's a lot of collective bands out there, but the thing that we have and that keeps growing is, I think it's pretty unique and pretty special.
Guys, thank you for talking with me and for this wonderful music. I feel like, I want to just go out and have a drink with you guys and sit around and talk, it would be really
Let's do it.
Thank you so much just for talking with me and sharing the music and your wonderful process and how the four of you are with each other. It's really nice to encounter.
Thank you so much, Baruch. What a pleasure. Great meeting you.
Thank you, Baruch.
Grupo Los Santos, William Beaver Bausch, Max Pollack, David Ambrosio, and Pete Smith. Thank you so much for being on Paradigms, talking with me about your music and your wonderful history together. And this is a band that's weathered some changes and come out strong and creative. I love the fact that they trust each other and know each other so well that they can kind of mess with each other, and it always stays good feeling, and they know that they've got each other's backs. It's a really amazing thing to be part of a group, any group that's co-creating together. And when you can co-create with others and there's trust, it's an amazing thing. Hoping for more of that in the world. So thank you guys for being on the show and sharing. And folks, if you'd like to know more about Grupo Los Santos, check out their other albums, read more about them, see some videos. Their website is Santos Fortet, that's SANTOS, 4, TET.com. Definitely check them out. And if you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out our archive at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, with a decade and a half of shows. Wow. Lots of amazing guests to inspire you. Paradigms.life. Check that out. I had such a great time talking with these four guys, Grupo Los Santos, and what was so fun about it was hearing the way they relate with each other. They're four obviously very different people, but there's respect between them, which is immeasurable. All right. I'm going to leave you with one more track from Santos 4. It's called David's Did So's. And we're going to stay with the same word for the week that we've been working with for a while now, which is peace. Say it, talk about it, create it, invoke it. Peace. All right, Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, let us in this world make peace and be well. You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.